Everyone is talking about the same games, same trailers, same hype, same opinions. But in 2025, some of the best games didn't get the spotlight they deserved. No massive marketing, no nonstop Twitch streams, just insanely good experiences that most people skipped. And that's a mistake, because some of these games, they hit harder than the blockbusters. They take risks. They stay with you. And by the end of this list, there's one game that will make you say, how did I miss this? Stay with me, because these are the 10 most underrated games of 2025. At first, this just looks like a driving game. You get a car, a road, and a destination. Nothing crazy. But then you realize something is wrong. The world is unstable. Reality bends when you're not looking. And the only thing protecting you is your car. Not a tank, not a supercar. A beat-up station wagon that slowly becomes your lifeline. Every trip feels risky. Storms roll in without warning. The road changes behind you. And here's the terrifying part. Your car feels alive. You upgrade it, fix it, depend on it. Because if it breaks down out there, you don't respawn. You don't reload. You're just stuck. The game never rushes you, but the tension never leaves. You're constantly asking yourself, do I push forward or do I turn back now? And halfway through, it hits you. This isn't about driving. It's about attachment, fear, and trusting something that can fail at any moment. But that's not all. Because the next game on this list, it doesn't trap you with a car. It traps you with your own mind. This game immediately feels wrong. Not broken, not buggy, just wrong. You play as a young nun, alone, marching through a cold, unforgiving world. No power fantasy, no weapons to flex, just doubt. And then the voice starts talking. Not a guide, not a narrator, a presence. It questions you, mocks you, pushes back when you try to do the right thing. At first, it feels philosophical, almost calm. But that doesn't last, because the game slowly starts blurring reality. Faith turns into fear. Silence turns into pressure. And listen to this. The most disturbing moments aren't violent. They're quiet. Long walks, awkward pauses, thoughts you wish you didn't have. Halfway through, the tone shifts. The story stops being symbolic and starts feeling personal, like the game knows exactly what makes people uncomfortable. Most players dropped it early, called it slow, called it weird. Huge mistake, because when the message finally lands, it hits harder than any jump scare. And next on this list, the next game doesn't question faith, it questions survival itself. This game doesn't let you feel powerful, not for a second. You're trapped on an offshore oil rig, surrounded by metal, water, and something that should not exist. There are no guns, no upgrades, no way to fight back. You run, you hide, you pray the sounds behind you stop getting closer. At first, it feels like survival horror. But then you realize this isn't about monsters, it's about panic. The rig starts falling apart, corridors flood, structures collapse while you're still inside them. And the voice acting, it feels too real. People screaming, begging, trying to stay calm while everything is clearly lost. But here's what makes it brutal. The game never rushes you with cheap scares. It builds dread slowly, relentlessly. Every step forward feels dangerous. Every pause feels worse. Halfway through, the situation spirals. Fast. You stop asking how to escape and start wondering if escape is even possible. Most players called it short, simple. They missed the point. Because when the final moments hit, you're not scared anymore. You're exhausted. And next on this list, the next game doesn't trap you physically. It traps your choices. This game tricks you at the start. It looks like a classic action RPG. Combat, exploration, story choices, nothing new, right? Wrong. Because every choice in this game has a body count. You hunt ghosts. But the ghosts aren't the real problem. People are. Families torn apart. Lovers hiding secrets. Villages rotting from the inside. And the game forces you to decide who deserves to live. Not in a cutscene. Not with a good or evil meter. You decide, and then you live with it. Here's the twist most players didn't expect. Your companion? The person you care about the most? They're already dead. And every decision you make pulls you closer to one impossible question. Save the living. Or bring back the one person you can't let go of. It gets worse. Because the game remembers everything. Every mercy. Every execution. And near the end, it stops asking what's right and starts asking what you're willing to sacrifice. Most people dropped it halfway. Too slow, too heavy. They never saw what it becomes. And next on this list, the next game doesn't test morality. It tests your sanity. This game doesn't rush you. It stares at you. You wake up in a strange mansion, black, white, red, no combat, no clear objective, just symbols, numbers, doors that refuse to open. At first, it feels calm, almost stylish. Then your brain starts overheating. Every puzzle connects to another. Solve one thing, and 3 more questions appear. The game never explains itself. It expects you to pay attention. Miss one detail, you're stuck. And listen to this. The puzzles aren't just logic-based. They mess with memory, perspective, time. You start doubting what you've already solved, second-guessing yourself. It gets crazier. Halfway through, the game starts breaking its own patterns. Rules you trusted suddenly don't apply. Safe assumptions become traps. And the deeper you go, the clearer it becomes. This isn't just a puzzle game. It's a test of patience, focus, and obsession. Most players quit early. Too confusing, too demanding. But the ones who stayed, they couldn't stop thinking about it for days. And next on this list, the next game doesn't test your mind. It pulls the trigger. This game is about one bullet. That's it. One shot, one chance. You pull the trigger, and then the real game begins. Because the bullet doesn't stop. You control it midair, bend it, curve it, thread it through impossible spaces. At first it feels clever, stylish, almost relaxing. Then the tone changes. Fast. The targets aren't random. They're part of something darker. A cult. A system. A past that refuses to stay buried. Every level is a puzzle wrapped in violence. Every shot feels intentional. And listen to this. The game never celebrates the kills. It feels cold, empty, like revenge without relief. Halfway through, the visuals get harsher. The music gets heavier. And the message becomes impossible to ignore. This isn't power fantasy. It's fixation. Miss your shot? You don't just fail, you feel it. Most people dismissed it as short. Just a gimmick. They were wrong, because when the final shots land, you realize the bullet was never the weapon. You were. And next on this list, the next game doesn't give you a bullet. It gives you a city that's already dead. This game drops you into a future that looks beautiful and feels completely dead. Neon lights, endless rain, a city where nobody actually dies anymore. Sounds perfect. It's not. You play as a detective chasing a killer in a world where death is optional. Memories can be backed up, bodies can be replaced. So, when someone really dies, it means something went very wrong. The investigations feel slow at first, careful, methodical. But the deeper you go, the darker it gets. You're not just solving crimes. You're digging through memories, other people's lives, their regrets. And listen to this. The game forces you to relive moments that were never meant to be replayed. No action hero nonsense, just quiet horror. Halfway through, the case stops being about the killer and starts being about the system. Who controls life? Who decides when someone is done? And then it hits you. In a world where no one wants to die, someone always does. Most players called it slow, too cinematic. They missed the tension. Because the closer you get to the truth, the more you realize the city isn't broken. It's working exactly as intended. And next on this list, the next game doesn't investigate death. It drives straight into it. This game looks fun. Bright colors, fast movement, arcade vibes, and yeah, it is fun. But don't let that fool you, because Pepper Grinder is ruthless. You don't just run and jump, you dig. Through sand, through walls, through the level itself. Momentum is everything. Lose it for 1 second, you're dead. The controls feel simple at first. Then the levels start demanding precision, timing, confidence. And listen to this. The game never slows down to help you. It expects you to learn fast. New mechanics hit constantly, each one building on the last. Mistakes stack up quickly. It gets crazier. Late game stages turn into pure chaos. Enemies everywhere, hazards overlapping, barely any room to breathe. But when you finally master it, you feel unstoppable. That's why most players bounced off early. Too hard, too intense. They never reach the flow state, because once it clicks, this game becomes pure adrenaline. And next on this list, The next game doesn't move fast at all. It barely moves. This game moves slow, almost painfully slow. Handmade characters, stop-motion animations, a world that feels fragile. Most players didn't have the patience, but that's the trap. Because Harold Halibut isn't about action, it's about existing. You play as Harold. Awkward, quiet, stuck on a spaceship that's been drifting underwater for generations. No epic quest, no chosen one energy, just routine. Cleaning, running errands, talking to people who feel real. And that's when it starts hitting you. The loneliness, the missed opportunities, the feeling of living someone else's life. Halfway through, the story quietly shifts. Small conversations suddenly carry weight. Jokes stop being funny. Choices feel heavier than expected. It gets worse. Because the game starts asking questions it never answers directly. What if comfort is the real prison? What if staying safe is the wrong choice? Most people called it boring, too slow, too weird. They never stayed long enough. Because by the end you realize this wasn't a game you played. It was a life you briefly lived. And the final game on this list, it doesn't move slow. It locks you in and refuses to let go. This game doesn't want you to feel like a hero. It wants you to feel corrupted. You play as a man who can see demons, not fantasy monsters, inner ones, creatures born from guilt, trauma, secrets people try to bury. At first, it feels like a detective RPG, isometric view, dialogue choices, careful exploration. Then it starts getting uncomfortable, because every power you use comes at a cost. The stronger you become, the more unstable you feel. And listen to this. Combat isn't about skill, it's about dominance. Breaking enemies mentally, exploiting their weaknesses, it gets worse. The story forces you to manipulate people, lie to them, use their pain to move forward. And the game never tells you if you're doing the right thing. Halfway through, you realize something terrifying. You're not fighting demons, you're becoming one. Most players dropped it early, too much dialogue, too slow to start. They never reached the turning point. Because by the end, the question isn't, can you save the city? It's, was it worth saving you? That's why this game deserved way more attention. These weren't the loudest games of 2025. They didn't have the biggest budgets or the craziest hype, but they took risks. And that's why they mattered. If even one of these surprised you, the list did its job. So tell me, which underrated game did you miss? And if you don't want to miss the next one, you know what to do. Subscribe.